College students have everything: libraries, professors, unlimited internet, AI tools, study groups, entire campuses built for learning. Prisoners have nothing: no Google, no Wi-Fi, no laptops, sometimes not even a desk, just a cell, a bed, and maybe one book. So here's the weird question. Why do prisoners often become extraordinary learners? How does someone enter prison barely literate and leave quoting philosophy, law, and history? Take Malcolm X. When he entered prison in 1946, he struggled to read basic sentences. But inside prison walls, he transformed into one of the most articulate thinkers of the 20th century. His method? He copied the entire dictionary by hand. Every word, every definition, every page. Thousands of pages, slowly, night after night. And by the time he left prison, he had rebuilt his entire brain. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Prisoners often learn faster than college students. Not because they're smarter, not because they have better teachers, but because prison accidentally creates the perfect learning environment. 3 brutal advantages. Advantages most students will never experience. And once you see them, you'll never study the same way again. Chapter 1, Forced Focus. Most college students think they have great focus. Wrong, you don't have focus. You have notifications, phone buzzes. Check it, email pops up. Open it, someone sends a meme. You reply TikTok, Instagram, Discord. YouTube, you're not studying, you're multitasking badly. And multitasking is just a polite word for distraction. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, explains this clearly. Your brain cannot truly focus on 2 cognitive tasks at once. It just switches rapidly between them. Every switch costs energy. And here's the brutal statistic. Researchers at the University of California found that after a distraction, it takes 23 minutes to fully regain focus. 23 minutes. Now look at the average student. Notifications every few minutes, texts every few minutes, scrolling every few minutes. Do the math. Your brain never fully returns to focus. You're constantly restarting, constantly resetting, constantly fragmenting your attention. But prison removes all of that. No internet, no social media, no streaming, no endless scrolling. Just time, long, quiet, brutal time. At first, prisoners hate it. Silence feels unbearable. But then something strange happens. The brain recalibrates. Dopamine resets. Attention stabilizes. Dense books stop feeling painful. Reading becomes normal again. Some prisoners read 8 to 12 hours a day. Not because they're disciplined, because there's nothing else to do. Scarcity forces focus, and focus is the foundation of learning. But here's the problem, though. Focus alone doesn't last. You can lock yourself in a quiet room, turn off your phone, study intensely for a few days, then you quit because motivation disappears. That's where the second prison advantage appears. Chapter 2, Survival Learning. Most students study for grades. Maybe a GPA, maybe a job later. The stakes feel distant, abstract, optional. But prisoners study for something very different: freedom. Some prisoners learn law because their public defender failed them. They study legal textbooks, case law, appeals, procedure, because their life depends on it. If they don't understand the law, they stay inside. And when learning becomes survival, your brain behaves differently. Psychologist Robert Bjork calls this desirable difficulty. When learning is difficult but meaningful, the brain encodes information far more deeply. Stress hormones activate memory circuits. Neurochemicals reinforce recall. Suddenly, information feels important, not optional, and the brain prioritizes it. That's why medical students remember procedures after performing them once. Why soldiers remember survival training. Why people remember traumatic experiences. High stakes sharpen memory. But here's the modern student problem. Most studying feels low stakes. If you forget something, you can Google it. If you fail, well, you retake the class. Nothing feels urgent. So your brain treats the information like background noise. Temporary, disposable. Prison removes that illusion. Every skill matters. Every piece of knowledge could change your future. So prisoners approach learning with extreme intensity. They read slowly. They reread pages. They memorize. They debate ideas. They internalize information because it might help them survive prison life or rebuild their lives afterward. And that kind of motivation is incredibly powerful. But here's the thing, though. Even motivation isn't enough. You can be motivated. You can be focused and still forget everything you studied. Because modern learning has another hidden problem. Too much information. Chapter 3, Scarcity Creates Mastery. Modern students drown in information. Infinite articles, infinite videos, infinite courses, infinite books. It feels like an advantage. But it's actually a trap. Psychologists call it information overload. When you have too many options, your brain processes everything shallowly. You skim, you jump topics, you half understand things. Nothing sticks. But prisoners have the opposite problem, extreme scarcity. Sometimes they only have access to a few books. 3 books, 5 books, maybe a dictionary. And that constraint forces a completely different learning style. They read the same book repeatedly, 5 times, 10 times, sometimes 20 times. They memorize passages. They analyze arguments. They copy paragraphs by hand, just like Malcolm X copying the dictionary. This kind of repetition activates what neuroscientists call deep encoding. Each reread strengthens neural pathways. Each repetition strengthens recall. Eventually, the knowledge becomes automatic. Not something you remember, something you are. But modern learners rarely do this. Why reread one book 10 times when you can open 10 different books? Why memorize something when you can Google it later? That mindset creates shallow knowledge. Psychologist Betsy Sparrow demonstrated this in a famous Columbia University experiment in 2011. Participants remembered far less information when they believed the answers were stored on a computer. Their brains outsourced memory to the machine. This is called the Google effect. When you know information is searchable, your brain refuses to store it. Why waste space? Just search later. But prisoners can't search later. So they memorize now. They internalize everything. And that difference changes everything. Less information, more depth, more mastery. 3 prison advantages: forced focus, survival motivation, scarcity depth. And together they create a terrifyingly effective learning system. But here's the part most people miss. You don't need a prison cell to use this system. You just need to recreate the conditions. Step 1. Artificial scarcity. Pick 3 resources maximum for any subject. 1 book, 1 course, 1 reference. Nothing else. Study those deeply. Reread them. Extract everything. No resource hopping. Depth beats variety. Step 2. Create survival stakes. Give your brain a reason to care. Set public deadlines. Teach the material. Build projects using the knowledge. Real consequences increase retention. Step 3. Dopamine detox. Remove distractions. No phone while studying. No social media. No multitasking. Just focused blocks of deep work. Cal Newport suggests 60 to 90-minute focus intervals. Pure concentration, no interruptions. When you combine these 3 elements, something powerful happens. Your brain stops skimming, stops scrolling, stops forgetting. It starts absorbing, encoding, understanding. But here's the problem, though. Even if you recreate the prison learning system, most people still study wrong. They read, highlight, reread, then forget everything a week later. Because passive review doesn't work, cognitive scientists have proven this again and again. Reading feels productive. Highlighting feels productive. But it creates the illusion of competence. You recognize information, but recognition isn't memory. Real learning requires retrieval, active recall, testing yourself, explaining concepts from memory, struggling to reconstruct knowledge. That struggle is the learning. Researchers in the book Make It Stick showed that students who test themselves retain dramatically more information than those who simply reread, because retrieval strengthens neural connections. Every recall attempt rebuilds the memory, stronger, faster, more permanent. So the final piece of the prison learning method is simple. Read less, test more, close the book. Explain what you just learned. Write from memory, teach it out loud. If you can't explain it clearly, you don't understand it. And prisoners do this naturally. They debate ideas in prison yards. They explain legal arguments. They discuss philosophy. They teach each other. Teaching forces understanding. Understanding creates mastery, and mastery builds confidence. But here's the real twist. The prison learning system isn't about intelligence. It's about environment. Your brain adapts to its surroundings. If your environment is full of distraction, your brain becomes distracted. If your environment rewards deep thinking, your brain becomes powerful. Prison accidentally creates the second environment: silence, scarcity, urgency, focus. And those conditions forge extraordinary learners. Now imagine what would happen if you recreated those conditions intentionally. 1 quiet room, 3 learning resources. No phone, high stakes, daily active recall. Suddenly your brain changes. Focus returns, memory improves. Learning accelerates. You start finishing books instead of skimming them. Understanding concepts instead of memorizing them. Connecting ideas instead of forgetting them. And within months, you're learning faster than you ever thought possible. But here's the final problem. Even if you fix your focus, even if you master active recall, even if you eliminate distractions, most people still learn too slowly. Because they're attacking learning from the wrong angle, they're working harder instead of working smarter. That's why I made the next video breaking down the 3 brain hacks elite performers use to learn 10 times faster. It's almost unfair. Watch that next.